Welcome to this edition of the BRFCS Podcast, in which we catch up with someone who follows Rovers home and away to, well, almost every game. But first, a message from Major League Baseball outfielder and designated hitter, and Rookie of the Year 1986, Most Valuable Player Award 1988, and six-time All-Star Jose Canseco, addressed to one Bradley Dack.
Hey buddy, this is Jose Canseco, 1986 Rookie of the Year, 1980 MVP, Mr. 40-40. To Bradley Dack, you are an athlete on my level. Keep killing it at the Blackburn Rovers and scoring those goals, man. Love for me and your friends at New York Rovers. Take care, buddy.
And thanks to our great friends at New York City Rovers for arranging that message from Jose Canseco to our own Bradley Dack. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome as our special guest on this episode of the podcast, the roving Rovers reporter, Rich Sharpe. Rich, it's been a while since we last had you on, but how are you?
Yeah, indeed, very well. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me back on.
You're very welcome. Honoured guest. Now, I guess, you must be the person that's closest to the club without actually being an employee. So, what's your perspective about what the expectations were at the beginning of the season, and how do you think those expectations have evolved during the season?
Obviously, last year there was the clear and obvious goal of getting promotion. I think they never shied away from that. And this time around, there probably wasn't that. That outward prediction that was put out either through us or by the manager in his interviews. But I do think they always felt a good start, using the momentum from last year. They could probably go into the second half of the season in a decent spot. I think part of it was down to, the other teams in the league, really. Probably felt that a few teams, maybe down to financial difficulties, might not be as strong as expected. Your likes of Aston Villa, Sheffield Wednesday, and there might be a chance of muscling in on there in the top half. And I think that's probably what has transpired. I mean, you look at the top six now, and there's probably the two of the six got parachute payments. You've got the likes of Bristol City and Norwich, maybe Sheffield United. Muscling in among the big teams. So. I think probably at the start of the calendar year there was a bit of a get together and said, look, if we're going to do anything this season, it needs to happen now. And we saw that great run of form last month. Obviously, the disappointment of Brentford, but yeah, I do think there was a thing of if it's going to happen this year, it's going to happen now. And I think they're probably about maybe where they deserve to be and probably expected to be at this stage of the season.
So you think expectations were as high as that?
I do, yeah. I think you look at the league, and I mean, it is a very competitive league, but you don't see many. I mean, obviously Brentford were very good on Saturday, but then they did show the defensive frailties as well. So, and I think there are a few teams going through that transition, which you do get. Obviously, Sheffield Wednesday chucked a bit of money at it, a couple of years in a row, and then have had to, try and work a way around that, which Rovers went through themselves, didn't they, a couple of years ago? Where you're losing your players, and I think there is a bit of an evolution in the Championship. I don't think you ever get, and there's a few teams, probably always expect to be up there, but the circumstances at clubs can change. So you look at Leeds last year with the Steve Evans and Paul Heckingbottom thing, and then suddenly they get this world super coach, and just things change so quickly at clubs in the Championship that. I think they always thought that they were on a decent, steady footing and could probably have a bit of a dart at the very least, the top half.
What do you think the club considers to be realistic this season, then?
I think, Steve, what did he... I have to remember, I can't remind myself of my own interview, but he did mention something, around the top half. Consolidation's a horrible word, nobody likes it, but, just to get into a position this season where you build into next season where they can feel like they're expected to be up there.
Yeah.
Any challenge this season would probably be, a bit ahead of schedule kind of thing. But it's just about getting yourself in a position where, rather than thinking, we might have a chance of the top six, that everybody at the club is feeling a bit like, yeah, we really can go for the top 6, and we probably expect to be up there.
I guess the transfer window has just closed, and that at the beginning of January, it seemed to spark a lot of enthusiasm. There were all sorts of rumours that we got about Britta Sombalonga, Sam Gallagher, and even Charlie Austin towards the end of the window. I guess, just how serious were those interests in those kinds of players, and particularly at those kind of wages?
Yeah, well, we'll start with the most obvious. Is obviously Gallagher. Is a player known to the club, and a player Mowbray admires. And even last summer, they tried to look at on loan and even a permanent deal with the numbers that whether they could get to those. I have to admit, at the start of the month and even towards the end of it, I expected Sam Gallagher would be a Rovers player, and I think probably he did as well. I just find it a bit strange that Southampton at the end were so adamant it wouldn't be allowed to leave on loan, but then he obviously didn't figure in the squad in their last game, and I think Rovers probably expected him to be available, because otherwise why would they have left it so long to hang on for their number one target if they didn't think he was going to be available. Sombalonga, I think he probably was a player that they looked at the very least. It was discussed. Looking at his numbers, I don't really see how that could have worked, and why Borough, would have let somebody go on loan who was so pivotal to their promotion hopes. Even though he doesn't play, we obviously saw his impact off the bench against West Brom.
Less impactful last night, though, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, exactly. I fancied a weekend off as well, so they've gone down in the bad books. But yeah, I think that's going to be the challenge for Rovers going forward. I mean, the figure that sticks in my head is, from the Championship accounts, where the wage to turnover ratio of 147%.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, they've worked so hard to get a wage structure in place that they have got at the minute, but it's how do you progress to that next level without
speculation,
breaking it. And that for me is going to be the big interesting dynamic. Like Rovers can get to the transfer fees, it's just the wages. And even when people like Gallagher are on 20-something thousand a week, having played a couple of games. I'm not sure whether this was Austin, but I was told that there was a player put to Rovers that would have been a 7-figure, with in terms of wages and loan fee all in. It'd have been a 7-figure deal.
Good grief.
And it is just weighing up how much is that worth to the club, how much of an impact it's going to be. You could argue that player could be the one to get you into that top 6, but Mowbray's very much a man, of you don't come straight into the team. So if you have a couple of weeks bedding in and then not having that bigger impact, it is a big commitment to make, and you've got to factor in the other players in the squad. Because footballers talk, they know what everybody's on. Somebody strolls into the dressing room on 30-35 grand a week. It's going to be like, hang on a minute, I've been here for this long, I've produced this, and suddenly this guy's walked in for 6 months. So that is going to be the interesting dynamic, I think, is the wage bill more than anything, particularly with the turnover of the club, which the Bats seem to be battling all the time, to try and increase.
Well, obviously we're under different FFP rules, of course, in the Championship, and that's much more turnover related. Whilst the TV income's gone up, the biggest component of turnover for us is gate money, and the gates just haven't gone up as I'm sure Steve Waggett expected. I mean, I get the sense with Tony Mowbray that he spends money as if it was his own. And there was a quote in one of your articles towards the end of the deadline day where Mowbray was quoted as saying, "There's money left in the budget. You have a yearly budget. You either spend it or you don't spend it." Yeah. So I didn't get a sense that he was desperate to Harry Redknapp style, dare I say it, flash the checkbook.
Yeah, and I know it's probably not great for supporters to read, and obviously the ongoing thing with Venky's is they are keen to spend the money. It's just if you're not seeing the evidence of that, you're probably thinking, well, are they really? Is he just saying that? But I really do get the impression that there is money, and they are saying, go on, spend and bring somebody in, but without looking into the ins and outs of it, it isn't really that easy, to go out and do it. And if Mowbray's not willing to upset the apple cart and threaten what is a strong, close-knit team, but then you come out of a transfer window and you get 4 senior players injured in one game, and then you're looking and thinking, well, should we have done? But you can't live like that. He's got his way of managing, and that really is the way that he's looking to go with it.
Yeah, I get another sense I get from Mowbray is a facet of his personality that was similar to Souness's. In the on-field ability is one thing, but it's the off-field character that matters as well, and how they will knit into that squad.
Yeah, no, certainly. He talks about it a lot, and so do the players as well. So they're obviously buying into what he's asking of them, and he said he didn't want to stockpile players and work with a massive squad, and they've certainly not got that, because, I mean, you look at the month, really, you've had Palmer out, so you could say Chapman in, but then if he's not going to play for a few months, and you've obviously then let Downing go out, so it is then up to the players coming through the under-23s to really fill that gap. But then if you're spending, probably it might cost them $3 million a year, I think, for the academy category 1 status. If you're spending that money, you want to see some return on it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Having spoke to Damien Johnson, he said he's never known a manager have such an interest in the under-23s, know so much about them, and watch them so regularly. So he's certainly watching those players coming through with interest as to whether they can break in.
There does seem to be a crop of decent youngsters coming through that, though. People who go regularly. I don't, given that I live in Sheffield, but you follow on Twitter and you read the match reports and you'll see them as well. Who are the ones that sort of like leap out and grab you as potential starlets of the future?
I'm always in the Dan Butterworth and the John Buckley camps. I know they're probably the most obvious ones, but just since I've watched Buckley, in particular, he's got that swagger about him as a central midfielder. There's a bit of bite about him.
Yeah.
He's got a snarl when he plays, and every decision he seems to be fighting for it. And a bit like Travis, that drive from midfield. And Butterworth's just really got that. He's got that X factor. There's a bit in his temperament which he's been sent off a couple of times this season for reacting to challenges, and that's obviously something he's going to curb, but he just excites you. He gets the ball, he wants to run at people and make things happen. So for me, those two really do stand out, and I think if Mowbray is talking about opportunities before the end of the season, I think they're probably
ones to look out for.
The two to keep an eye on.
You talked just a second ago about Venky's being willing to sort of like splash the cash. There was an interesting thread on the BRFCS forum recently which compared the amount of money that we've spent in recent years, in the Venky years, on attackers versus defenders. Given that we've got a negative goal difference, but we're in the top half, is that a blind spot, or is it just a coincidence?
Well, yeah, I was going to say there's probably not the evidence to suggest otherwise, if you know what I mean, that you look at the players that they've looked to spend, 7 figures plus. We had Selena, Freeman, Brereton, Gallagher. They're all attacking players. But
yeah,
I think it's probably more coincidence in that they cost more. So if you're going to bring in those players, you do tend to spend the bigger sums. And when you looked at the squad at the start of the season, they'd got more defensive options. So your back four was you're always probably going to stick with Raya in goal, Lenihan and Mulgrew. You've got 2 left-backs already because you brought Omari in the January.
Yeah.
Are you really going to go and spend, obviously, Nyambi, but were you going to spend big on a right-back? But the centre-half dynamic, that's going to be another interesting one, that you've got Mulgrew and Lenihan. Rodwell obviously came in as a bit of a take a chance on. What do you do with him in the summer? Downing's out of contract. You've got all these young ones, so Wharton's 21 now. You've got Grayson, obviously, McGlaw as well. So that'll be another interesting one with the centre halves.
Yeah.
If you'd have looked at it, would you have thought, am I going to get in above, Lenihan and Mulgrew? I know obviously Patrick Bauer was spoken about, but would he have looked at it and thought, well, am I necessarily going to break into a central defensive partnership that's been so stable under the manager? So I think a lot of it is down to coincidence, but obviously options as well. They went into the season with a lot more defensive options than they got attacking because of they've got Chapman, Antonsen, Payne and Armstrong. I know they brought Armstrong back, but bang, there's 4 attackers gone from last season's squad. So I think that was probably why they were looking more at those attacking options.
And of course, the irony now is that with the injuries that we've had, and with the when we lose big style. We'll come on to that later on in our chat. But it does feel like the January window has been an opportunity to perhaps to get a beast in, or somebody to really marshal that defence. We seem to have elegant, cultured footballers in the defence, and I just wonder how suitable they are in the Championship.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's been, Lenihan's had to feel like he has to be that, leader of the pack because he's the one who's probably got that within him.
Yeah.
Because I think every time Rodwell has tried to show that, he's looked, vulnerable. He tried to do it at Wigan a couple of times where he ploughed and he got clattered early on, but, he tries to be aggressive and win the ball, and it just doesn't really suit him. It is when he's calm and composed among himself that we see the best of him. But yeah, I know you keep going back to a Samba and a Nelson type. It's the kind of player that you think every squad needs, and probably that is the one thing that you do think they've lacked. And probably thinking back for a while, really, for the last one that they did really have.
It is. It does feel like that's an area I would expect to be addressed in the summer, but we shall see. But negative goal difference and top half, I suppose that speaks volumes on the one hand about how good our forward line is.
Well, you'd like to think at the start of the season, win more than you lose and score more than you concede, and you'll have had a good
there
season.
Or thereabouts,
and we've got half of those ticked at the minute. So.
Yes, interesting one that. In terms of outgoings, the one that everybody was fearful that he would leave, of course, was Bradley Dack. I think he's the jewel in the crown. How much genuine interest was there, and how much was it press speculation? Because we had the likes of, Spurs at one point, West Brom, Southampton, and somebody, I presume it was from the other side of the East Lancs roadside, stirring up Burnley, were rumoured to be interested.
I mean, I'll not go into these things come from certain places, and without going into details, I don't think Rovers were ever massively worried about any of the interest that was shown or reported, should I say? Because as Mowbray said, they made the stance clear on he's not for sale. That probably put teams off, as did the money that they'd have to spend. So really, how many teams we've talked about the Championship finances? How many are really going to look at Bradley Dack and think we're going to spend that money in January? And if he is going to go to the Premier League, how many of the teams that would look to sign him also would take a chance on a lad who's played 6 months at Championship level throughout his career and done well. So I do think the dynamic of it probably works in Rovers' favour of where he does go and his next move. How does he weigh that up? And I think in January it would have been a difficult sell for a manager to go to a board and say, look, if he wanted to stay in the Premier League or wanted to get out with the Championship, that those are the numbers that you'd really suggest.
Yeah, I thought West Brom might have been the sort of club that would have been interested in that to get back. Still, they've got a reasonable amount of money coming in, parachute payments, all the rest of it. That was the one that I was fearful of. But
obviously when Barnes went as well. But
exactly,
they are completely different players, and when their problem's not been scoring goals, they've got Dwight Gale and J-Rod in their squad, so that's probably not something you'd think. But would a Championship club really, be able to commit to those numbers?
Absolutely.
If they are, if they're only in the top six, that they weren't running away with the league, were they? So I do think that would have been a difficult one to get over the line in January.
Well, pleased to see that he stayed, obviously, and we'll see what unfolds again over the summer, I guess. We've reduced our dependency on loan players. We've now only got the Ginger Ninja himself, Harrison Reed, still with us. If you had to put a percentage chance on it, what do you think the outlook is like for keeping Reed and also Jack Rodwell?
Reed fancies a crack at Southampton first team. Rovers were hoping, I think, did he come like 3 or 4 games into the season, something like that. They were trying to get him earlier than that, but he was trying to see, how things were at Southampton, and still thought he might get, a chance around the first team. He's just turned 24, so I do think this will be a make or break summer for him. He's played a lot of football these last couple of years at Norwich and at obviously Rovers this year, so I think he'll go back in the summer and see how the land lies, and I think it's probably 50-50 whether he'll leave Southampton, but if he does and Rovers can work a financial package together, I think it'd be a pretty high percentage that he'd want to come back, and obviously Rovers would really, really want to take him. So I do think he's brought something that probably they used to look at Bennett to do, which is probably why we've seen Bennett used more in a full-back area of late. I do think if he is going to leave Southampton, then Rovers would certainly make the move, and you'd hope they can put a financial package together. Rodwell, I guess it'll probably come down to who's interested, as it was last summer when when he came to Rovers, there weren't many people willing to put their hand up and say, we'll take Jack Rodwell. And he has slotted him well. I know there's a lot made about his character, but I guess that's just based on a Netflix documentary and Sunderland fans talking. We've seen it the opposite way, where Rovers fans have given both barrels to players and then he's gone somewhere else. And you look at, Palmer seems to be, one who's just slotted in straight at Bristol City. It's just opportunity, isn't it? So you'd like to think there's some loyalty and that he's grateful of the opportunity. Mowbray doesn't think it'll come down to money, but opportunity. So if that is the case, I'd probably say 70-75% chance that they'll look to get something done on that one.
I just wonder whether he'd be the sort of player that would be on the shopping list of a promoted side.
He's going to be a difficult one to judge, isn't it? Because can you judge him on the short time at Rovers, or the fact that Rovers have had him in close quarter and been able to watch him? Because everybody who sees him in training just said he's an absolute class act. Even long before he's had this run in the team, people were saying, look, he'll come good, Jack, and he's got that pedigree. So it will be an interesting one. Who's interested in him? There'll probably be talk of it, just to try and bump up some interest and get the numbers going. So that'll be an interesting one. But I do think Rovers will look to try and get him tied down, because they're the one, they've put the work into to get him to where he is now.
It'd be nice to think that he is, well, A, happy at the club, and B, thinks that it's mutually beneficial. But football is a hard-nosed business these days. And if someone comes along and offers him back to Premier League wages, I think we've just got to be realistic and say, let's pretend we had him on loan for a year. A bit like Craig Bellamy. I think back of him, they're sort of saying, well, we had him on loan for a year. It was terrific while he was here, but... Yeah.
You always knew there was another move around the corner for him.
Pretty much. So in terms of players then that are sort of like on the front and centre of the mind, one but not for the right reasons, Ben Brereton, that issue is probably not going to go away until he scores some goals and cements a place in the side. Mowbray was quoted again in one of your interviews, Ben Brereton is going to be a superstar for this team in coming years. What do you think is Mowbray's plans for Ben? Because I heard rumours that he wanted to put him in the under-23s, but the word was that wouldn't look good.
Yeah, that's probably the bit with the 23s. It's the PR thing, isn't it? It's you put in your big money sign in the 23s, but then they need the deal to work, don't they? So, and if you're going to get the best out of him, you need to get some confidence and maybe scoring a few goals that might help. But yeah, I do think it doesn't look great, does it, as an outward look if you're putting him in there. But I actually thought he did all right at Brentford at the weekend. He looked a lot smoother in possession than we've probably seen. Mowbray gets the whole, because he probably talk about Brereton more than we do any other player in the squad. Even Dack, really, in press conferences always.
It's the fee, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, and that's always going to be the case. And as in the same way of Mowbray talking about not spending the money, he sees spending the money on Brereton, that he's here on a long-term deal, and just because he's got this price tag doesn't mean that he should have any more or less expectation than anybody else, or that should give him any more reason to play games than he does. Whether he just sees this as a year of bedding into the surroundings and look for him to kick on then, but everybody needs the deal to work, you'd think, and even for the lad himself, you're rooting for him, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely.
There's no Rovers fan who's going to be looking at anybody who've written him off and said to him from the first time I've seen him, he's rubbish, he's this and he's that. They'll still want him to do well because he's a Rovers player and you've committed this much money to him.
Correct.
So you want to see some return on that, whether it be in terms of the goals or any future sell-on value, because they've committed a lot to him. So, as for what we'll see for the rest of the season, we'll probably still see him used in the same way that he is. But as we've said, that the manager sees him every day in training and is committed to him. He talks highly about him, and so I think he'll just stay where he is now and have a similar impact on the team and be used in a similar way, really.
What do you think Mowbray believes his best position is? Does he give any clues away?
I think as a 10, surprisingly. I think I can see Ben Brereton playing off somebody in years to come.
Yeah.
Maybe that when
When we sell Dack for 25 million.
Yeah, I keep adding another note on.
250 million, that'll be good.
Exactly. If and when, Dack does go, maybe he's seen that as a possible. Because if he's talking about he's not ready to play the Danny Graham role, then because he can play all across them, so that's the benefit he does bring. That you're probably going to find a home for him on either side. Or I can see him playing, just off a striker really. And I think that'd help him if you've got a Danny Graham taking all the brunt of stuff for you. I think I wouldn't say it's the easiest position to play, but there's probably less pressure in that position when you don't having to lead the line. You can roam around, and maybe we will see him giving a bit of a go. I think that was the role he was probably playing on Saturday, which probably did suit him a bit. He should have linked up well with Armstrong. They're big mates as well, so maybe there's something in a front line of years to come of Brereton playing just off Armstrong rather than the other way around.
Yeah, as you say, you just hope that the kid gets a couple of goals quickly.
And it's probably been more in hope than expectation so far.
Yes.
You've probably not seen anything so far that's made you think, I tell you what, we're going to bring Brereton on, he's going to score. But there's always those moments, isn't there, where you're probably saying, this is going to be his day, and you're just hoping that day is sooner rather than later.
Well, I keep thinking back to Deepdale and that goal.
Yeah.
And I must admit, at the time when he scored it, my head turned immediately left to look at the assistant linesman because I thought he was offside. And when the flag went up, I had no qualms about it whatsoever. Then when he watched on TV, oh my God. It is one of those sliding doors moments, isn't it? He scores, his confidence is sky high, he bags in the next game, and before you know it, you've got a superstar in your hands.
I think he was off, but he scored it at Brentford after probably can't have been 2 minutes, which was probably his first start. And you just thought, God, if that counts, everyone's thinking, flipping it, we've signed a lad and first start, and he's scored 2 minutes in at a Premier League team, and it's just the way things work. And you've probably seen plenty of look at Dominic Samuel. What did he score? 5 goals in August.
Yeah.
And then scored 3 times for the rest of the season. So they work in different ways, these things, don't they?
Yeah, and so much I think of elite sport is played in the head, and so much is about how strong you are between the ears as much as anything else. And that's what you hope. I hope the crowd can just give him some support, as you said earlier. While he's wearing a blue and white shirt and he's a Rovers player, he gets our support, and there's just no other pathway to go down. Now, when Rovers have gone this season, they've gone. Proper gone. Bristol City, Swansea, Preston, and then last Saturday. What do you think the root cause is for this? And what does Mowbray think about those kinds of results? How much frustration do you sense when you talk to him?
I think it was in his first press conference where he did suggest he had this style as a manager of, when you go behind, we'll chuck forwards on and we'll go for it and we'll lose 4 or 5 rather than 1-0. I do think he has that bit of an approach to management that, if we're behind, there's no point losing by the odd goal. We might as well go down trying to get back into it. But for me, I think it's just the game just gets stretched, and that's where Rovers look vulnerable. I think, in the compact, they've got the 2 defensive midfielders behind the ball. That's when they're at the best, playing at high intensity. But when they become ragged and gaps start to open up and that they can get picked off, that's when the goals come, I think. And you didn't want to do that at Brentford, but the biggest concern is they just look well beaten too often. You look and there's 15 minutes to go.
Yeah,
there could be a couple of goals down, and you think
it could end up 5.
Yeah, you're thinking not about 2-2. You're thinking, no, how many is this going to finish? Because they just look well beaten. I think it's 9 times in 15 away games now they've conceded more than once. And no teams. I think Ipswich might have conceded 31 as well. I think Rovers have conceded 31 away from home. And they are worrying statistics, particularly, when you can go 3 games without conceding. And nobody previously put it down to, it's just, you don't see these results coming and bang, they come along. But I think it's got to the point now where, it's gone beyond that.
It's happening too often. And I think the symptoms and the traits are too similar. And that does make me wonder about mental resilience or that willingness to fight back. And
he put that down to in the mentality, the conceding goals in quick succession, which hampered him probably the back end of last year. When I asked him on Saturday about these capitulations, he said he thought it was an anxiety to be too keen to get back into matches too soon, and you try and do that and you get blown away. But I'm not sure we've seen enough evidence of that to be the real reason. But I do think it is when games get stretched, they do look a little vulnerable.
And I look for leadership on the pitch as well. And when I talked earlier about having a beast in the back four, you're looking for somebody to sort of like just hold it together, but also give a rollicking when a rollicking is due, keep people on the toes.
Yeah, probably. I know he was injured. Obviously, he's out of it. But when your centre half limps off when you're 5-2 down in the last few seconds, it didn't really give that greater impression as it did on Saturday.
The optics don't look good, as they say.
No, it was a disappointing end on Saturday. But the scoreline probably was harsh because the first half, I mean, Brentford were really poor at the back, but really good going forward, and that probably made it more difficult for Mowbray. That you're 2-0 up early, and you're thinking, well, we've kept 3 clean sheets in a row. Should we be able to see this out? When really that Brentford back foot, the best way Rovers had got was really to keep going for it.
Yeah, as soon as they scored one, I lost all confidence at that point, because you could almost like see them, all the Rovers players looking at each other, and it was such a sloppy mistake from such an unusual source in Travis. It's cracky. If he's going to have a bad game today, then we really are in trouble, kind of thing.
I mean, I've not really watched it closely. I mean, the manager thought it was a foul on Travis, but I know what you mean with that one. And then you've lost Dack and Graham 10 minutes into the second half, so that's probably then taken away.
And we're goosed at that point,
Probably taking away your chances of, trying and going and getting a third or a fourth and killing it off.
And the irony of not having a Casey Palmer to bring on as a like-for-like replacement for Dack.
Yeah, exactly.
And a Paul Downing on the bench as a like-for-like replacement at the back. Yeah, it's all those things that sort of like, you sort of think, well, it's just not our day today. Arguably, our best 45 minutes and our worst 45 minutes of the season have come in consecutive matches. What does Tony Mowbray think contributed to this? And are we weaker in our reserve strength than perhaps we first thought?
Well, I mean, you'd have to say that when Dack and Graham went off, things went downhill. But then, you could take how influential they are to the side. You take that out of anyone, and
it's a big loss.
Yeah, but I mean, it was the manager said. I think it was in October when he first said he felt he was a striker short. After after Samuel got injured.
Yeah.
And we had the time at Swansea, we kept going through. Danny comes off and they concede.
Yes.
So from that point of view, that made it even more surprising they didn't bring anybody in. And that's why I was confident, the Gallagher was coming in. The longer the month went on, I thought, well, they're just waiting now. They're just waiting. So obviously losing 3 players as they did on Saturday inside an hour of, Evans, Dack and Graham probably didn't help, and there was a few too. You mentioned Travis, a few players didn't quite hit the levels that they have been hitting, and I don't think Rovers are quite at that level in the Championship yet, where a few can have an off day.
Yeah, you can't carry more than one, I think.
No, like last year they could probably coast through with some 6s and 7s and get there, whereas now they probably need.
You've got to be on it.
Yeah, 3 or 4 hitting top straps and the rest not far behind. And I think just on Saturday there were just a few dipping a bit below the usual levels and couldn't get to the intensity that they'd got to in the Hull game. See,
there's one contributing factor you've not mentioned. I think it's only fair to bring it to life. You didn't see the Hull game, did you?
I didn't know.
But you did see the Brentford one, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I've witnessed all the defeats. So I've missed 2 Rovers games since I've taken over in 2.5 years, and I've missed 2 wins, so it probably says more about me than anything.
Well, the whole game, I have to say, was I know a number of people have waxed lyrical about it. I thought it was one of our most composed performances. Probably the best under Mowbray, potentially. Even.
Yeah, I have managed to watch it back, and it was very impressive. I mean, they gave Hull just no time, did they? Just
absolutely.
You're thinking, they'll bring the ball out now, and then bang, Bennett's in there, or Reed's nicking the ball off them, and that is where they're at the best. And it is getting that intensity levels, and I think the manager has said that a similar thing. He calls it foot flat to the floor, and to win a game in the Championship, Rovers have to have the foot right on it, and if they take it off at any point, that's when we can see them start to dip below the levels, and they probably give a few points and goals away.
There were a number of games last season where you could sort of say, well, we won this one, but we won it because we're in a lower division.
Yeah.
And the chances that we've conceded, the ball would fizz across the area, someone would lash at it and whack it over the bar or whatever. You think, well, that would have been punished for that, and we are getting punished for it. I thought Brentford was sort of clinical in their precision. They seem to pick
like
us
we
off.
said about like you said, getting stretched, and they're good enough to be able to get into the final third. And it's one pass, and the goal where Morpay scored for the fourth. Rodwell, he was stood next to him at 1 minute, and then bang a 1-2, and he's clean through, and he's switched off for momentarily, and the ball's in the back of your net. And I think that is a big difference this year.
So how would you describe the morale of the squad then after Saturday? Well, I suppose Griffin Park is an interesting counterpoint when you think about where we were 2 years ago and then versus last Saturday.
It was just as difficult as getting players to stop on Saturday as it was on that day. But,
I can imagine.
Thankfully, Bradley Dack came to the
rescue.
Came to my rescue. But to be fair though, even when Mowbray first came in, the morale was good. I mean, they got some big characters, in that squad when they went down. A lot of likeable lads, and that's still the case now. And it is a cliche that you tighten it and we all get on. And obviously, you think everybody says that, and probably when you are doing well, everybody can say that. It is when things are going badly. But I think the fact that Mowbray, gives him a responsibility within his team. I know he's mentioned it before that. He has some players that he can turn to, get involved in decisions, and they're not afraid to, they feel honest enough with each other, So after the games against Preston and Wigan, where they had a team meeting and everybody chipped in, I think people feel like they can do that, without digging each other out. They're honest enough with each other to be able to do that, and I think that comes from the manager and also from being around each other for quite a while. The team that started at Brentford on that relegation day, there's 7 of those still, firmly in amongst the first team plans now. So this is a team that's really grown together and been through a lot together, and I think that has contributed to the feeling really within everything.
That's certainly the impression that you get as a fan. They do seem tight-knit, but as you say, again, the hard-nosed cynic in me sort of says, yes, but they would say that, wouldn't they? But there do seem to be some really, really decent human beings in that squad, and that compares very favourably with players that we've had on the books over the last few years. It's and
the players they bring in, and I think that is the difference, that now you go and watch Rovers and you've got people you can identify with that want to be here and are here for they're signed up, not just they're not
for the right reasons.
They're not a lone player. They're not here on a free transfer. They're not here for a last paycheck. They're here because they want to progress themselves and the club at the same time, and that's probably contributing a bit of forward momentum that they've got.
Indeed. So recognising all of that, what's your prediction for our finishing position?
I said 10th, and I said that actually before they'd signed a player in Austria. I was asked by a member of the Rovers coaching staff, where do you think we're going to finish? I said, I think we'll finish 10th. So I'm sticking with it. I think that's about where they are and probably where they deserve to be, really. I mean, there's a few teams probably finishing a bit higher than you think, and probably a few will finish below them that you'd probably expected to finish above. But I think roundabout, if they can finish 10th, and I just want to keep the season interesting for as long as you can, really. Just to be in amongst it, never really get more than 4 or 5 points, behind that top 6 if they can, just to always feel like we can go on a run and we can get there if possible. But it is about, they've drawn a hell of a lot of games, which, you can take them either way, can't you? That they go one way and you're probably heading towards the bottom 6, they go the other way and you're right up in the top 6. So, but I think where they are as a squad, I feel like they are a top half championship team and have shown enough throughout the season that they can be that. And I do hope that they can have an end to this season, that really just gives that bit of momentum to them. And rewards probably what has been a tough season in terms of, there's been a few moments where they've been questioned, things have been asked about them. But if they can finish the season off with a bit of forward momentum, I think that would be a really good base.
It's important for season ticket sales as well, isn't it? It's important to attract new players to show that the trajectory is very definitely positive, and all of that I think is important. But I have to say, if we finish top half or even top 10 for a side coming up, we spent a lot of money on Brereton, but other than that, you know, we've acted prudently. I think that'll be a terrific achievement.
I mean, yeah, you look at the starting lineup, and really, Dack 750. I mean, Armstrong's is becoming a bargain more by the week into with his.
He's really blossomed, I think, in the last few weeks.
So yeah, you're looking at the table and you're thinking, well, Forest spent 15 million on one player. You've got Swansea just behind them, who were obviously Premier League. Stoke in 15th, Wednesday in 16th. You think about their wage bill. And more or less, barring a disaster, they're going to finish as the best promoted team. I think they'll certainly not give up the ghost on the top six while it's still on the horizon.
No, but that will be terrific. But I'd say anything in the top half for me, I think, will be a real result. Rich, thank you once again so much for giving up your time. It's very kind of you. We do appreciate it. And we look forward to reading a report on Saturday that he's on a favourable result rather than last Saturday's.
Yeah, no, well, that was the start of the capitulation, wasn't it, Bristol City? Where I remember thinking there where Mulgrew stuck them 1-0 up from a corner and it was looking like 6 games unbeaten. You're thinking it's easy, this championship.
Yeah, we've adjusted beautifully, haven't we? Oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, went into an international break on the back of a 4-1 pasting and things weren't looking quite so great.
Well, if worse comes to worse, you'll just have to send Alex along to all our remaining fixtures.
Have a few more weekends off and
we'll have a whip round and keep sending you for the weekend in Berlin. Yes.
Yeah, send me away.
Fantastic. Thanks once again, Rich. It is appreciated.
No bother. Thank you very much for having me.
You're listening to the BRFCS Podcast, the only podcast approved to cover the 2018-2019 season by the New York City Rovers. Don't forget to check out www.brfcs.com.
It was the last game. It was the Brentford game. They got relegated.
Yeah.
And I was doing an interview with Mowbray and realised I'd not pressed record on my dictaphone. So I'd asked all these questions of the manager. And luckily there was, because they were going down, there was a lot of national journalists there.
Yeah.
And one bloke had not taken his phone away, so I had to plead with him and say,
please, can you share?
Excuse me, can you send it? I was like, the one game that I've done it.
By the way, massive thank you to Joe Bamford, BRFCS forum member, and his band The Symmetry for providing all the incidental music used in this episode. I hope you'll look them up on Facebook, and if they're playing live near to you, well, go and see them.